Listen and understand that Terminator is out there. It can't be bargained with. It can't be reasoned with. It doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear.
And sure, first it was USAID. But they are now systematically going into the Small Business Administration, the Department of the Treasury, and they will not stop.
And it absolutely will not stop. Ever.
Until they believe they have total control over spending.
Until you are dead.
USAID chases China all around the world.
What the fuck are you talking about?
It supports freedom fighters everywhere.
What the fuck is he talking about? What the fuck are you talking about?
Up until yesterday, delivering firewood, for instance, to the brave Ukrainian defenders on the Eastern Front.
What the fuck are you talking about? What the fuck are you talking about?
Hey guys, Rafi here from the Endgame Investor, and the blitzkrieg against the deep state has begun. It is in full swing. The deep state is under a major assault, and so far we are winning. Trump has so far gutted the U.S. aid with Elon's help and the help of his army of software engineer geniuses. He has also gutted the UN Relief Works Agency in Gaza, which funded and participated in the October 7th murder spree against my people and even held hostages captive. There's a lot more to wreck and burn down. RFK and Tulsi look like they're going to be confirmed today. Imagine all of the crap we are going to find out that has gone on since the 1960s, and especially during COVID and all of the murder and mayhem that has happened during those years. And as excited and bloodthirsty as I am, I want to caution that this is not going to stop the endgame. That's a question I've been getting a lot lately. Are Trump's spending cuts, and there have been massive spending cuts de facto because he has shut down entire agencies and he will continue to do so. This is way beyond my expectations. I was not a Trump fan going into this. His first term was a disaster. This term so far is looking pretty damn good. But no, the spending cuts, and I'll show you the effects of those spending cuts in the Treasury general account at the Fed. They are not going to stop the endgame. They are not even going to slow it down. They're actually going to speed it up because the monetary system still is what it is. And in a debt-based fiat monetary system, the debt must always increase at an exponential rate or it triggers a banking crisis. We still have one last banking crisis ahead of us. And the less money the government spends, the more money ends up back at the Fed and the less in the banking system, which triggers the final banking crisis. I will show you all of this in explicit graphs. And before we get there, there are 3 ways you can support this channel. First, you can buy gold with Miles Franklin by clicking the link in the description below, or calling the number in the description below and mentioning the Endgame Investor. If you want to hide your gold and silver in a dirty man safe, you can use the code ENDGAME10 at checkout, link in the description below for 10% off. You can, of course, subscribe to the Endgame Investor on Substack, which is probably the easiest way to support me. And you can join my Patreon, where the last thing I uploaded there and we covered is 3 lessons in how to fight the deep state. The first is play dirty. The second is make it about money. And the third is support the good Jews that are involved in the fight and attack the bad ones. Lessons from the burning bush. Check out the Patreon for as little as $3 a month and get very important lessons from 2,000 to 3,300 years ago. First of all, this equation on the top is the pace of gold warrant deliveries that we're on for. Over 60,000. We've had 44,902 deliveries so far. We have 19,942 contracts open in the spot contract for February 2025. You can see that in the box below. And we also have 4,323 deliveries that were taken today or yesterday that are not counted in those 19,942. And so we are on pace for deliveries of 60,591 contracts of gold. And some people are saying, oh, this is just accounting entries, it doesn't really matter, but we do know that gold really is moving from London to New York. It is the second biggest inflow monthly ever And we also know that during that first inflow in 2020, the price of gold skyrocketed from about 1450 to 2100. That is a huge increase in percentage. What is it, like 30%? Something like that. 30% from 2800 now is, I don't know, it's like $800 higher than we are now. So that would be like 3500, 3600. I'm just making these numbers off the top of my head with very quick math. I could be completely off, but I'm not completely off. I'm just a little bit off.
Something's off.
Point is, the deliveries are not entirely fake. They don't mean as much as they should mean, but they do mean something. Here we can show you the second biggest monthly inflow ever. This is a 20-year chart going back to 2005, and that little red line I put there is a match of the current month. The difference between December and January 2025. I transposed that line over here to show you that this past month has been the second biggest. If it were the biggest, then the red line would be bigger than the next line next to it. It's hard to see. Just trust me. This is a huge inflow of physical gold into the COMEX, and it means that a financial crisis is gaining speed, and it will be the last one. Now, the last two slides I'm going to show you will explain why these spending cuts, and they are spending cuts, are not going to slow down the end game. If anything, they are going to speed it up. Here is why. At the top here, we have the daily Treasury statement for January 21st, 2025, the day after the inauguration. That is the first day of Trump and DOGE gutting the deep state. The Treasury balance at the Fed, how much money they have left in their account, was $704,874,000,000. And now we've hit the debt ceiling. That was on January 19th or 20th or something like that. Janet Yellen timed it perfectly so that he'd have a problem with the debt ceiling. The Trump administration would be hamstrung by that. They did this on purpose. And now, January 31st, that's the last daily Treasury statement that we have. 10 days later, we are at a balance of $793,025,000,000. That's an increase of $92 billion. Now, if we are at the debt ceiling and the government can no longer raise any more net debt, all they can do is reload bills that have been redeemed, so they maintain the same debt numbers, and we are at the debt ceiling. So why is the cash balance going up? Because there's still income from taxes and other sources of revenue, and because spending has been gutted a little bit, not entirely, of course, this is just the beginning. Spending is slowing down because there have been so many firings and closures of agencies. That's why the government cash balance is increasing. And what is the effect of the government cash balance increasing? It is this. The red line we have are reserve balances in the banks. At the bottom is the Treasury's cash balance at the Fed. Now you can see here, aside from when the Fed is printing a bunch of money and they can both go up in tandem, that happens during huge periods of quantitative easing. Otherwise, these things go in opposite directions. And we know that the Fed is not printing money now. It is continuing quantitative tightening. Its balance sheet is still shrinking. So these lines are going to go in opposite directions. If the red goes up, the blue goes down. If the red goes up, then we have more bank reserves. If the red goes down, we're going to cross this threshold of $3 trillion, which is where over here, the regional bank crisis was triggered over here where my cursor is circling. Now, once we cross the threshold of $3 trillion for any appreciable length of time, 1, 2, 3 months, something like that, we're going to hit the next banking crisis because that is the level where the last banking crisis was hit. So if the blue continues to go up like this or doesn't go down, that means that bank reserves are going to struggle more than they otherwise would, and that is going to bring forward the next and final banking crisis. I support strongly these spending cuts. I support almost everything that Trump is doing. Not everything, but I do support a lot of it. And I think the good far outweighs the bad right now, at least. I will keep my ears open. I will be honest with everything that I see. But right now, it's good. But that doesn't mean it's going to postpone a crisis. The reason that debt must always increase in a debt-based fiat monetary system is that the only way that old debt can be paid off is with new debt. And if new debt is not issued, the old debt cannot be paid, and then you start a default cycle. So if new debt is not issued, even if the government's budget is balanced, that will cause a banking crisis. And once that hits, the Trump administration is going to have to decide if it wants the banks to fail or it wants to bail them out. This is going to happen. And my bet is they're still going to bail the banks out because they do not want to suffer the consequences of all the built up theft and debt that has already accumulated since 1971. And so, my prayer for the Trump administration is that they have enough time before the endgame hits to dismantle and burn as much of the deep state as possible, and then the endgame should hit. There is no way the Trump administration can stop that because the theft that has taken place has already taken place and therefore must be paid for. But in the meantime, Godspeed, Trump, Elon, RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, Kash Patel, God is with you, and so am I. Burn it down, and let's get this going.